This is the complete history of Jason Voorhees, the hockey-masked killer of Friday the 13th, who became one of horror's most iconic villains, despite never being intended to carry a franchise. What started as a simple revenge tale about a grieving mother—
Oh, I couldn't let them open this place again. Not after what happened.
—transformed into a billion-dollar empire that redefined slasher cinema. Jason Voorhees was not supposed to be the star. When screenwriter Victor Miller sat down to write Friday the 13th in 1979, he had something completely different in mind. Miller himself later said he had a major problem with how the franchise evolved because they turned Jason into the villain. He still believed the best part of his screenplay was the fact that a mother figure was the serial killer, working from a horribly twisted desire to avenge her son's senseless death.
My only child.
Jason was dead from the very beginning. He was a victim, not a villain. Let's start at the beginning, with a tragedy that would spawn countless sequels. On June 13th, 1946, Jason Voorhees was born to Elias and Pamela Voorhees. From the start, Jason was dealt a cruel hand. He suffered from hydrocephalus and mental disabilities that caused major facial and physical deformities. The boy who would become horror's most feared killer began life as its most vulnerable victim. The summer of 1957 changed everything. At Camp Crystal Lake, 11-year-old Jason became the target of relentless bullying from other campers. The deformed, mentally disabled boy endured constant cruelty. One day, the bullying escalated beyond words. The other children tossed Jason into the lake, knowing he could not swim well. As Jason struggled for his life in the dark water, two camp counselors, who should have been watching, were too busy with teenage hormones to notice. They had slipped away into the woods to have sex while a child drowned. Jason's death destroyed his mother, Pamela.
Oh, my sweet, innocent Jason.
What had been maternal love twisted into something far darker. The camp closed after Pamela killed two counselors in 1958, but her thirst for revenge lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface. That moment came over 20 years later when Camp Crystal Lake prepared to reopen. The events depicted in the original Friday the 13th film were not about Jason at all, but about his mother's methodical revenge against anyone who dared to return to the place where her son died.
Oh, I couldn't let them open this place again.
The film that launched the franchise was born from the success of Halloween. Producer Sean S. Cunningham, who had previously worked with Wes Craven on The Last House on the Left, wanted to create something shocking and visually stunning. The concept began as nothing more than a title. Cunningham believed in his Friday the 13th moniker, though Victor Miller used the working title A Long Night at Camp Blood while drafting the script. Filming took place in New Jersey during the summer of 1979 on a shoestring budget of just $550,000. The production used Camp Nobi Bosco in Blairstown, a Boy Scout camp that is still operational today and proudly displays a wall of Friday the 13th memorabilia. When the film hit theaters on May 9th, 1980, nobody expected what happened next. This low-budget horror film earned nearly $40 million domestically and almost $60 million worldwide. In today's money, that opening weekend alone brought in over $20 million, and the film's total run of 237 days generated about $140 million in current US dollars. The cast included future star Kevin Bacon in an early role, along with Betsy Palmer as the vengeful Pamela Voorhees. Palmer famously said that if she had not desperately needed a new car, she never would have accepted the role. After reading the script, she called the movie a piece of shit. Yet her performance as the grieving, homicidal mother became the foundation of everything that followed. The film's final girl, Alice Hardy, played by Adrienne King, would establish the franchise's first final girl archetype that would evolve through Ginny Field in Part 2 and Chris Higgins in Part 3. Young Jason appeared briefly at the film's end, portrayed by Ari Lehman. This was meant to be a shock moment, not the birth of a franchise icon, but audiences wanted more, and Hollywood was eager to provide it. Friday the 13th Part 2 arrived in 1981, and everything changed. Jason was no longer the victim, but the killer, having somehow survived his childhood drowning and grown into a backwoods murderer living in the forests around Crystal Lake. For the first time, Jason Voorhees stalked victims as the primary antagonist, though he had not yet acquired his most famous feature. The hockey mask that would become Jason's signature did not appear until Part 3 in 1982, and its origin story is wonderfully accidental. 3 Detroit Red Wings fans were working on the film, including Martin Sadoff, who handled the 3D effects. When director Steve Miner noted that the script called for Jason to don a mask, Sadoff ran to his car and grabbed a replica Terry Sawchuk goalie mask he owned. Miner liked the concept, but the original mask was too small for actor Richard Brooker's head. Makeup effects. Director Doug White created a larger version based on the original, decorating it with drill holes for a weathered look. The Detroit Red Wings elements remained in the form of crimson triangles painted on the mask. Jason literally stole his iconic look from a hockey fan's car, transforming a piece of sports equipment into one of horror's most recognizable symbols. Legendary makeup effects artist Tom Savini had already established the franchise's gruesome aesthetic with his groundbreaking gore work on the original film, creating the template for the visceral kills that would define the series. The franchise hit its stride throughout the 1980s, releasing films annually. Part 4 was supposed to be the final chapter in 1984, introducing young Tommy Jarvis played by Corey Feldman, but box office success made that title laughably premature. Part 5 in 1985 tried to pass the torch to a copycat killer, but audiences demanded the real Jason. Part 6,
Jason Lives,
literally resurrected the character through a lightning bolt, embracing the supernatural elements that would define later entries. Tom Savini returned to direct Part 4, bringing his unmatched practical effects expertise to deliver some of the franchise's most memorable kills. The actor who truly shaped Jason's personality was Kane Hodder, who portrayed the killer in 4 consecutive films from Part 7 through Jason 10. Born April 8, 1955, Hodder brought a stuntman's physicality and a fan's understanding to the role. Early in his career, he suffered a devastating accident during a fire stunt for a newscast in 1977, resulting in third-degree burns over more than 50% of his body. This experience gave him an intimate understanding of physical trauma that informed his portrayal. Hodder developed strict rules for Jason's behavior. He often looked at directors from behind the mask and said that Jason wouldn't do that. When the script for Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, called for Jason to kick a dog, Hodder refused. He said Jason may kill people, but he's not bad enough to kick a dog. Under Hodder's influence, Jason never killed children or harmed animals unless they attacked first, and he showed visible disgust when killing would-be rapists, displaying unexpected moral characteristics. Hodder's commitment to the character extended beyond the films. During filming of The New Blood, his dressing room was a quarter mile down a dirt road. One night after filming ended at 2 a.m., he decided to walk through the woods still wearing the full Jason costume. When a local sheriff approached and asked if he was with the movie, Hodder did not respond. The man asked again, so Hodder lunged forward and grunted. The terrified sheriff fled, tripping and running. The director later told Hodder that the local law enforcement had planned to stop by but never showed up. Hodder's tenure as Jason coincided with the franchise's most creative period. Part 7 introduced psychic powers through the final girl Tina Shepard, while Part 8 took Jason to Manhattan, although budget constraints meant most of the film actually took place on a boat. Jason Goes to Hell in 1993 killed the character again while introducing supernatural possession elements, and Jason X in 2002 launched him into space for a futuristic setting. The most ambitious entry came in 2003 with Freddy vs. Jason, a crossover that had been in development for over 15 years. New Line Cinema spent approximately $6 million on 18 unused scripts from more than a dozen screenwriters before finally bringing the project to life. The film paired Jason against a nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy Krueger, played by Robert Englund, creating the ultimate slasher showdown. The film grossed over $116 million globally, making it the highest-grossing entry in the franchise. However, this success came with controversy. Director Ronnie Yu replaced Kane Hodder with 6'5" Canadian stuntman Ken Kirzinger. Hodder still expresses resentment over losing the role he had helped define, though he remains friends with both Kirzinger and Robert Englund. The 2009 reboot attempted to revitalize the franchise for a new generation. With a $17 million budget, it earned over $90 million worldwide, but failed to launch the planned sequel series. This reboot featured Derek Mears as a more agile, tactical Jason, emphasizing his backwoods survivalist skills over supernatural elements. Behind the commercial success lay ongoing legal battles that would determine the franchise's future. In 2016, original screenwriter Victor Miller invoked copyright termination, seeking to reclaim rights to his work after 35 years. This provision of United States copyright law allows authors to retain rights to their creations. In 2018, a United States District Court ruled in Miller's favor, determining that his screenplay was not a work for hire, but the product of an independent contractor. The Second United States Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed Miller's victory, setting him up to reclaim domestic rights to the franchise. However, the situation is complicated. Miller owns only United States rights, and only to the first script, while Sean Cunningham owns the adult, hockey mask-wearing Jason. Neither can legally use the character in new movies without the other's permission, creating a legal deadlock that has prevented new films. Yet Jason's story continues in new forms. The Crystal Lake series, developed by Brad Caleb Kane for Peacock, represents the franchise's boldest evolution yet. Set as a prequel to the 1980 film, it focuses on the events of 1971 and the relationship between young Jason and his mother Pamela, played by Linda Cardellini. The series faced production challenges, including the firing of original showrunner Brian Fuller and budget overruns that reportedly doubled the initial projections. Despite these setbacks, filming concluded at the original Camp Nobi Bosco location in October 2025, with a March 2026 premiere planned. Kane describes the show not as quite a slasher, but as a psychological thriller and a paranoid 1970s thriller. While promising rivers of blood and ingenious kill sequences, the focus remains on character development and the psychological deterioration that leads to the first film's events. The Friday the 13th franchise's impact extends far beyond box office numbers. As the second highest grossing horror franchise domestically, with over $908 million across 12 films, it trails only Halloween, while surpassing Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and Saw. Jason's 152 total kills across the series have become a grim statistic that fans track religiously, significantly more than Michael Myers' 124 kills or Freddy Krueger's 42 dream murders. But the numbers tell only part of the story. Jason Voorhees transformed from a plot device into a cultural icon, his hockey mask as recognizable as any logo in popular culture. The franchise helped establish the slasher genre's conventions while simultaneously subverting them. Harry Manfredini's "Key Key Key Ma Ma Ma" sound effect became shorthand for impending doom, while the film's moral universe suggested that certain behaviors invited punishment. The character's evolution from victim to villain to anti-hero reflects broader changes in horror cinema and society's relationship with violence. What began as Victor Miller's story about a mother's grief became something larger, a modern mythology where death is temporary, but trauma is eternal. Jason Voorhees endures because he represents something primal and universal. He is the bullied child who refuses to stay down, the consequence of negligence and cruelty, the reminder that some wounds never heal. In a genre built on temporary scares and cheap thrills, Jason offers something more lasting, the promise that actions have consequences, that the past never truly dies, and that some killers simply cannot be stopped. From a drowning boy to a space-traveling revenant, Jason's journey reflects horror cinema's ability to evolve while maintaining its core appeal. As legal battles continue and new projects develop, one thing remains certain. Jason Voorhees will return, because the best monsters are the ones we can never quite put to rest. From one unstoppable killer to another, Jason Voorhees became a horror icon through tragedy and revenge. But there is another villain whose creation of his own victim led to his downfall. In Stranger Things, Vecna thought he had broken Will Byers, but he actually gave Will powers that would become the key to defeating him. How Will's hidden abilities connect to Vecna's ultimate mistake, next.